Namaskar. The topic of discussion in this module is on the Antarctic Ocean. The Earth is called as a blue planet mainly because of the presence of the bluish oceanic water masses. In the blue colored oceanic zones, there are two white zones separating them from the other major oceans. One is the polar ice and its ocean surrounding the North Pole as the Arctic Ocean, and the other one is the polar ice covered continent ocean surrounding the South Pole as the Antarctic Ocean. The Antarctic is a unique region in the whole globe. The Antarctic has not only the continental ice but also the oceanic waters as major masses. The Antarctic is a unique region in the whole globe. The Antarctic has got not only the continental ice and oceanic waters but also a major land mass. The Antarctica is an ice buried continent existing around the South Pole. It is a barren land covered by ice and snow. It is one of the coldest regions in the world. It is slightly colder than the region around the North Pole. Many geographers say that these waters do not form a separate ocean at all. It is only an extension of the southern parts of the other oceans like the Atlantic, Indian and the Pacific Oceans. This oceanic mass is referred to as the Southern Ocean. The Antarctica is the coldest, driest and windiest continent and has many unique features to learn. Hence, the following aspects are highlighted in this lesson: the geographic setting, the historical expeditions, the land, climate and the glaciers, the natural resources and the international cooperation. Let us see the first part of the geographic setting of the Antarctic Ocean. The Antarctica is centered asymmetrically around the South Pole. It is the southernmost continent in the world. The 66°34' south latitude forms the outermost boundary of the Antarctic Circle. The area covered within the circle is called as the Antarctic continent. It includes parts of the Southern Ocean, surrounding seas, ice shelves, continental glaciers, plateaus and mountain ranges. The Antarctic covers more than 14 million square kilometers, making it as the fifth largest continent in the world. The coastline of the Antarctic measures up to 17,968 kilometers. The nearest continents to the Antarctic are the South America, New Zealand, Australia and the Africa. The shortest distance lies between the Cape Horn of South America and the Palmer Peninsula of the Antarctic. About 98% of the Antarctica is covered by ice, which averages at least 1.6 kilometers in thickness. The name Antarctica is a Greek word which has a feminine meaning as the opposite to the north. It is almost like anti-Arctic or opposite to Arctic zone. Arctic is in the North Pole, Antarctic is in the South Pole. The Antarctic land mass has a stretch of mountains called as Trans-Antarctic Mountains. This divides the Antarctica into two regions. The portion west of this range is called as West Antarctica and east of it is called as East Antarctica. About 98% of Antarctica is covered by only ice sheets averaging at least 1.6 kilometers in thickness. The continent has about 90% of the world's total ice. It contains about 70% of the world's freshwater resources. If all of this ice were melted, the global sea levels would rise to about 60 meters. The East Antarctica lies on the Indian Ocean side of the Trans-Antarctic Mountains. It comprises the Coates Land, the Dronning Maud Land, the Enderby Land, the Mac Robertson Land, the Princess Elizabeth Land, the Queen Mary Land, the Wilkes Land, the Terry Addy Land, the George Land, the Oates Land, and the Victoria Land. The western Antarctica lies nearer to the South American continent. It comprises the Ross Ice Shelf, Mary Byrd Land, Ellsworth Land, Palmer Land, Ronnie Ice Shelf, Filchner Ice Shelf, and the Graham Land. A lot of seas are around the Antarctic. The notable seas are the Weddell Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Ross Sea, the Bellingshausen Sea. The prominent mountains of the Antarctic are Ellsworth Mountains, Sippel Mountains, Mount Sidley, Mount Nansen, Mount Elster, Mount Markham, Mount Kishpatrick, and Mount Bar-Smith. There are some notable bays existing around the Antarctic. They are the Amundsen Bay, the Edward VIII Bay, Mackenzie Bay, Far Bay, Vincennes Bay, Kainan Bay, Sulzberger Bay, Pine Island Bay, Marguerite Bay, Hope Bay, and the Lutzow Home Bay. The South Polar Plateau is located around the South Pole. West Antarctica includes several other mountain ranges and volcanoes. The Vinson Massif is the highest point in Antarctica at 5,140 meters elevation, and it stands in the Ellsworth Mountain near the peninsula. The Mount Erebus, the Antarctica's most active volcano, lies on this island. It rises up to 3,794 meters. Several historical expeditions were conducted by the earlier workers, and let us see the historical expeditions conducted towards the Antarctic. Long before Antarctica was discovered, the ancient Greek philosophers believed that a continent exists around the southern end of the earth. In the year 1772, the English navigator James Cook began his search to the southern continent. It was Captain James Cook who for the first time crossed the Antarctic Circle on the 17th January 1773. He also sailed around the Antarctic in December 1773 and again in 1774 January using his ships HMS Resolution and the Adventure. James Cook's voyage also revealed many things about the oceanic waters and their marine life, including the seals and whales. Due to this information, many hunters started moving towards Antarctica and explored the area. In the year 1819, a British sealer named William Smith discovered one of the islands called as the South Shetland Islands. Nobody knows who saw the Antarctica continent first. Antarctica was first sighted in the year 1820 by the crews of the ships captained by three individuals. They are the Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen, an Estonian-born captain in the Russian Imperial Navy, Edward Bransfield, an Ireland-born captain in the Royal Navy, and Nathaniel Palmer, an American sealer out of Stonington, Connecticut. The first documented landing on mainland Antarctica was made by the American sealer John Davis in western Antarctica on the 7th February 1821. The other persons and people who did their explorations are James Weddell in 1823, John Biscoe in 1831, Lieutenant Jules Dumont de Urville in 1837, James Clark Ross from 1839 to 1843, Mercator Cooper in 1853, and Robert Falcon Scott in 1902. The first inland exploration of Antarctica took place between 1901 and 1904. The United Kingdom explorer, a captain in the Royal Navy, led a team of explorers and scientists to the Ross Sea. In November, Scott and other men headed towards the southern parts of the continent, and they have crossed the Ross ice shelf. But due to illness, harsh weather and lack of food, they could not complete in one direction, but one group moved up a glacier through the Transantarctic mountains and reached the edge of the icy inland plateau. During the Nimrod expedition, called as South Pole Party, in the year 1907, the first step to climb the Mount Erebus and to reach the South Magnetic Pole happened. Ernest Shackleton, a member of the Scott's team, returned to the Antarctica in 1907. Part of his expedition headed for the South Magnetic Pole, the farthest point on the earth in the direction of the magnetic south. They reached the point in January 1909. In addition, Shackleton himself and 3 other members of his expedition made several fuss in December 1908 and in February 1909. They were the first people to traverse the Ross ice shelf. They were the first people to traverse the Transantarctic mountain range. They were the first people to set their foot on the South Polar Plateau. An expedition led by Norwegian polar explorer Roald Amundsen from the ship Fram became the first to reach the geographic South Pole on the 14th December 1911. Later, Scott reached on the 17th January 1912, which was followed by Bayard, who reached the continent by airplane in November 1929. This place was called as Amundsen Scott Station. Exploration by air provided a new way to study the Antarctic. In 1928, the Australian explorer Sir Hubert Wilkins surveyed the Antarctic Peninsula and nearby islands in the first aeroplane voyage over the Antarctic continent or the land. Richard Evelyn Bayard led several voyages to the Antarctic by plane during the years 1930 and 1940. He is credited with implementing mechanized land transport on the continent and conducting extensive geological and biological research. The race to trace the South Pole became one of the most famous events not only in the history of Antarctica but also in the history of human explorations. Let us see the next part of the land, climate and glaciers of the Antarctic. As per the geological records, it was found that Antarctica was an ice-free continent many million years ago. Scientists have found fossils of trees and dinosaurs and small mammals that once lived in this continent. Glaciers began to form around the South Pole about 38 million years ago. They grew rapidly about 13 million years ago and formed a very thick layer of ice and snow known as the Antarctic ice cap. The ice cap has buried almost all of the Antarctica for the last 5 million years. The ice cap is up to 4,800 meters thickness. At its highest points over the mountain ranges, the ice cap rises as high as 4,100 meters above the sea level. Today, this Antarctic ice cap forms the largest body of fresh water or ice in the world. Its volume of 30 million cubic kilometers represent the world's 70% of freshwater resources. The weight of the ice cap causes the ice to spread outward and slide towards the coast. Ice near the coast moves as much as 200 meters a year. In some areas, the ice cap breaks and forms crevasses more than 30 meters deep crevasses. The East Antarctica faces the Atlantic and Indian Oceans and covers more than half of the continent. Mountains, valleys and glaciers mark the coast of East Antarctica. The central part of East Antarctica is a plateau about 3000 meters above sea level. The West Antarctica borders the Pacific Ocean. The Antarctic Peninsula is a mountainous S-shaped finger of land that points towards the South America. In fact, this peninsula forms a continuation of the Andes Mountains chain of the South America. There are numerous islands around the Antarctic. The notable islands are Balleny Island, Scott Island, Thurston Island, Peter I Island, Charcot Island, Adelaide Island, Biscoe Island, South Shetland Island, King George Island, Elephant Island, South Orkney Island, Coronation Island, Joinville Island, James Ross Island, Hart's Island, Alexander Island and the Berkner Island. Two large gulfs cut into Antarctica on opposite ends of the Transantarctic Mountains and thereby forming the Ross Sea and the Weddell Sea. Smaller bays also are present along the coastline of the Antarctic. The notable coasts of the Antarctic are the Princess Martha Coast, the Princess Astrid Coast, the Princess Reinhild Coast, the Prince Olav Coast, Kemp Coast, the Mac Robertson Coast, the Willem Coast, the Queen Mary Coast, the Knox Coast, the Butt Coast, the Sabrina Coast, the Banzare Coast, the George Coast, the Hobbs Coast, the Walgreen Coast, the Yates Coast, the Robert English Coast, the Louis Poult Coast and the Cade Coast. The Ross ice shelf, the largest one, measures about 700 meters thick at the inner edge and about 200 meters thick at the outermost edge. In summer, the outer edges of the ice shelves break away and form immense flat icebergs. Scientists have measured the Antarctic icebergs. They found that the area covered were found to be as huge as 13,000 square kilometers. Each winter, the surface of the Antarctic Ocean freezes into a sheet of ice. In summer, the sheet breaks into pieces called ice floes. Winds and waves push the floes against one another, forming thick masses known as packed ice. Some packed ice piles up in ridges against the shores. In winter, packed ice may extend as far as 16,000 kilometers from the coast. The Antarctica's climate varies from extremely cold, dry conditions on the inland plateau to milder moisture conditions along the coast. Many people call this plateau as a polar desert. It has only about 5 centimeters of snowfall each year. The average annual precipitation on the coastal areas is about 60 centimeters. The Antarctic winter lasts from May until August. The Antarctic summer lasts from December until February. The July temperatures range from minus 40 degrees Celsius to minus 70 degrees Celsius inland and from minus 15 degrees Celsius to minus 30 degrees Celsius on the peninsular coast. The January temperatures range from minus 15 degrees Celsius to minus 35 degrees Celsius inland and reach to 0 degrees Celsius on the coastal regions. The northern islands may have summer temperatures of up to 10 degrees Celsius. The icy winds make the Antarctic air feel even colder. The winds that sweep downward from the plateau can average 70 kilometers per hour. The wind gusts often reach the coast at 190 kilometers per hour speed. Let us see the next aspect of the natural resources of the Antarctic. The Antarctic Ocean has a unique set of biodiversity and natural resources. Only a few plants grow in the Antarctic because of the ice covered land and typical climatic conditions. Mosses are the most common plants. Only 2 flowering plants grow in the Antarctica. They grow over the northern part of the Antarctic peninsula. Simpler organisms like algae grow on the snow and also in the lakes and also on the ice surrounding the continents. Black, white and green lichens have been found to be attached to the rocks. These lichens survive by bunching together to conserve water. The animal life of the Antarctic are very wonderful to see. Only a few insects and other tiny animals are found to spend their entire lives on the Antarctic mainland. The continent's largest land animal is a wingless midge, a type of fly no more than 12 centimeters long. Most land animals live at the edges of the continent. Very small lees, mites and ticks live by attaching themselves with the mosses, then under the fur of the seals or on the feathers of the birds. They are all surviving. The Antarctic Ocean has abundant wildlife. Krill, a small shrimp-like creature that feeds on the tiny floating organisms, is the most common animal of the oceans. Many other Antarctic animals depend on the krills for their food. It is protein-rich food for the people also. There are squids which are eaten by many other Antarctic animals. About 100 kinds of fish varieties are found to be existing in the oceanic waters of the Antarctic. These includes the Antarctic cod, ice fish and the plunder fish. Whales are the visitors of the Antarctic. Several kinds of whales migrate to Antarctica during the summer season. The notable varieties are blue whales, fin whales, humpback whales, minke whales, right whales and the sea whales. The blue whale is the largest animal that has ever lived, with its length growing up to 30 meters. Antarctic whales that eat fish and squid include the killer whales, the southern bottlenose whales, the southern fork-toothed whales and the sperm whales. It has been observed that the killer whales are found to be hunting the seals, penguins and smaller whales in the Antarctic. It is also seen from the exploration reports that various kinds of seals also live in the Antarctica. They spend most of their lives in the Antarctic waters by swimming, diving and catching food. Most of them nests on the beautiful coast of the Antarctic. The largest seal in the world is the southern elephant seal, which feeds on the squids in the Antarctic waters. Whenever we talk about the Antarctic, we remember the penguins. Penguins are the beautiful, lovable ones most often associated with the Antarctic oceans. These are birds. They cannot fly, but they waddle awkwardly on land. But they are the most skillful swimmers in the oceanic waters. They fly through the oceanic waters for diving for fish and other food. There are 6 kinds of penguins which are native breeds of the Antarctic continent. The playful Adelie penguin are the most common kinds of penguins. They build their nests on the pebbles of the coast. The tall and quiet penguins are called as the emperor penguins. They are the most spectacular birds on the globe. They grow to about 1.2 meters. The other varieties of penguins are chin-strap penguins, gentoo penguins, king penguins and the macaroni penguins. All of them nest on the Antarctic Peninsula and also on various islands. The rockhopper penguin are one variety of penguins which nest only on the islands north of Antarctica. It is reported that more than 40 varieties of flying birds spend their summer season in the Antarctica. These birds include albatrosses, prions, and a large group of seabirds known as petrels. The Antarctic is known for its mineral resources. Small copper deposits have been explored in the Antarctic Peninsula. East Antarctica has traces of chromium, gold, iron, lead, manganese, molybdenum, and zinc. Coal beds are also existing and lying within the transantarctic mountains of this region. It is also reported that the recent scientific drilling tests have revealed the possibility of petroleum reserves in the Ross Sea and the Bransfield Strait of the Antarctic region. There is also a fear that any large scale mining would harm the Antarctic precious polar environment. Hence, protection of this environment is necessary from all these human activities. Let us see the fifth important aspect of the international cooperation held in the Antarctic region. The scientific knowledge of the Antarctica has increased worldwide during the last century. Antarctica has no government. Although various countries claim sovereignty in certain regions, there is no popular or any famous government in Antarctica. Status is regulated by the 1959 Antarctic Treaty and other related agreements, collectively called as the Antarctic Treaty System. The treaty was signed by 12 countries including the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, Argentina, Chile, Australia, and the United States. About 12 countries have established more than 50 scientific stations on the Antarctica and in the nearby islands. These countries were Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, the Soviet Union, the Union of South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. The United States has set up a station at the South Pole plus 5 coastal stations and one other inland station. The Soviet Union has also built a station at a point it named the point as the pole of inaccessibility. This station lies at the point farthest from all coasts. The researchers concentrate on various aspects including the study of earthquakes, gravity, magnetism, oceanic resources, and the solar activities. The meteorologists also study the weather conditions and determine the air pressure, humidity, temperature, and the wind direction of the Antarctic. The other scientists measure the thickness of the ice cap and studied the shape of the land masses. The Antarctic Treaty sets aside the Antarctica as a scientific reserve. It gives only freedom to do scientific investigations and environmental protection and banned all military activities on this continent. In 1988, the Convention on the Regulation of Antarctic Mineral Resources was adopted. The Madrid Protocol bans all mining in Antarctica, designating the continent as a natural reserve devoted to peace and science. The Antarctic Treaty prohibits any military activity in the Antarctica, including the establishment of military bases and fortifications, military maneuvers, and weapon testing. The Antarctica today has more than 30 years round scientific stations on the continent and nearby islands. The McMurdo station has the largest community. About 1,000 scientists, pilots, and other specialists live there each summer. Fewer than 200 people stay during winter. A water plant collects and desalts the seawater from the McMurdo Sound Station. Significant research also deals with the ozone. Many scientists believe that research in Antarctica can answer many important questions about the past, present and the future of the Earth. Let us see some more details about the Antarctic in the next modules.